Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Liverpool Connection Podcast. This is my football and music series that I do, obviously with a musician. Lately, I've had musicians that have come on that support other teams, but now I'm back in the thick of things, and I've brought an amazing musician, and he's a Liverpool supporter. So, it's a win-win for me. Um, He's got a brand new album coming out Friday, March 22nd, with his band, Starsailor. He's also a solo artist and massive Liverpool supporter. It's James Walsh. James, welcome to the podcast.
It's good to chat to you. Thanks for having me.
He's over in Belgium at the moment in a five-star hotel. Having caviar, champagne, and all that good stuff that rock and roll lifestyle gives you. But how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Just got here about an hour ago. Been to grab some food and yeah, just I tend to sort of come to the city that I'm playing in Europe the night before. Because there are a few occasions kind of earlier on in my career where I decided to risk it and travel on the day. And flights were cancelled, and it can be a disastrous decision. So sometimes you think,
it definitely can if you're on UK trains, you won't
yeah.
You won't get anywhere.
Well, the one time where I decided, right, that's never happening again, was I was flying to a gig in Sweden, and I thought, right, the sound check's not till 5 p.m. Surely, if I'm on a flight at 6 a.m., there's no way I'm not going to get there in time. And the flight just got later and later and later. And there were other flights going, but you're constantly in that state of like, when they don't sort of definitively say it's going to take off at this time, you're just constantly in a state of flux. Like, well, if I move to a later flight, then sod's law, this flight's bound to finally take off. And it got to a point where I just wasn't going to make the gig in time. So I thought that's never happening again. I'm going to make sure I get to venues or certainly to countries the night before I'm due to play. And it's you'd say, that you should have kind of done that in the first place, but 99.9% of the time, like every gig I'd done before that in Europe, especially if you go super early in the morning, it always worked out. It was just this one time, and I thought, one time's enough. I'm gonna make sure.
Well, it's like, I live in the States, so getting a flight can be expensive over there. The direct flights are expensive. So when I went home last time, I went from Austin to Atlanta, and they only give you an hour in between. No wonder, the flight was cheap.
Yeah.
And Atlanta Airport, if anybody's ever been there, you've got to get from domestic to international on a train. And it's like 25 minutes. And my flight was late. So I'm legging it through the airport. I made it by about 4 minutes.
Wow.
And then on the way home, I went from Manchester to New York. And obviously, I didn't think you've got to go through customs in New York. And then you have to go back through security. I made my plane by about 20 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah, or I would have had to stay in New York, probably till the next day. So I was really happy I made it. But yeah. Those flights, you've got to have at least a 2, 3, 4 hour transfer window,
Yeah.
If you miss it, you don't want to get stuck in an airport, which I'm sure you've got loads of stories being stuck in places that you're just like, I'm ready to go home.
Yeah, the band, we were actually stuck in an airport in Denmark last year or the year before. The years are going by so quick at the minute. We were waiting for a Ryanair flight, and it was 8 hours late. So you get to a point though where you just kind of have to make the best of it. Like as long as they're serving beers and it. I think it helps when it's a small airport as well. It was a small airport, so everyone was just sort of chatting with each other and trying to make the best of it and have a beer and
well, at least like getting stuck by yourself. You're with bandmates, so that kind of I would say that kind of helps pass the time.
And luckily it was the way back, not the way to the gig. That might have been a bit more of a panic. So it didn't sort of affect anything work wise. It was just coming through the door at home 8 hours later than expected. It was one of those as well where they kind of caught you on the plane, and then I'm sure they did this at least once, but maybe more than that, where you literally board the plane and then they go, actually, we're not going to be able to go now, so can you all get off again?
Yeah, it's like, what's the point? I've been stuck on a plane like for 2 hours on the tarmac. Yeah. It's like, just let us off. There's no air conditioning and you're sweating. You're just like, just let us off. We can go have a pint, please. But James, I want to talk about Liverpool first before we get into your musical roots. So you're a Chorley lad, right?
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people think, because Starsailor is like some of the lads are Wigan, right?
Yeah, we're a bit of an amalgamation of Northwest towns, really. Two of the band are from Warrington, and the keyboard player's from Wigan, and we went to Wigan and Lee College. So there's a strong Wigan connection. Although we actually met in Lee, we were at the Lee sort of campus, but and then Warrington, there's a strong connection because that's where we used to rehearse, as well as two of the band coming from there. And the Chorley connection, to be honest, is just me. I'm the sort of torchbearer for the Chorley connection.
So how did Liverpool come into this then? Like, are your family Reds? Are they football supporters?
My older brother was a big Liverpool fan when I was growing up. Although he defected to Blackburn when, because Kenny Dalglish was his idol. So when Kenny Dalglish moved to Blackburn, and growing up in Chorley as well, and his mates were going to watch Blackburn, so his sort of passion for Liverpool obviously didn't run as deep as his sort of idol worship for Kenny Dalglish, and he's kind of remained a Blackburn fan since then. Whereas I've stuck with Liverpool, and I guess on the playground as well, it's like you'd always get teased by the sort of Blackburn, Bolton, Preston fans as a glory hunter. It's like everyone was either a Liverpool fan or a United fan, despite coming from Chorley. Yeah. And in retrospect, you think, well, yeah, I can take that. I can understand why you would say that. But if there's one thing I believe in even more strongly than don't be a glory hunter, it's don't change your team. When you've picked your team, when you've watched them, when you've bought the shirts, when you've invested that sort of early passion and tears, like I remember when we lost to Genoa in the UEFA Cup and having to go into school the next day after that, and when we turned the match at the result around in the second leg against Auxerre. That was a strong memory for me as well. There was no way that it was going to be anyone else than Liverpool.
Yeah, I'm my boyhood hero was Kevin Keegan, so I'm glad I didn't follow him to Hamburg. Uh, yeah, I mean, just Liverpool through and through. I don't quite understand your brother going from Liverpool to Blackburn, because of Kenny. I mean, you can still, think Kenny's an amazing person and, amazing manager, and he's still, he's King Kenny, but don't
Yeah,
change your club allegiance. No chance. Yeah, that's well. I mean, I guess you can say, they won the league.
yeah.
That's the the way it goes. But yeah, that's a strange one for me. But who was your footballing idol growing up?
Robbie Fowler, I
Uh,
think, because, and it's one of those things where there'll be an endless debate about all the amazing strikers that Liverpool have had, like Suarez. I guess to a certain generation, although he's obviously burnt a lot of bridges now, but when Michael Owen came on the scene, but and people don't always put Fowler in that same rush. Obviously, how could I forget him? And people don't always put Fowler in that same bracket, but it was just the era that I was able to go to games, especially, and become a bit more independent with my sort of following of the club. And I remember when he scored 5 goals in a 5-0 win against, I think it was Fulham. And there was about 10,000 people in Anfield, and I was one of them. And I'm surprised more people. I'm sure I can sort of safely say that I was definitely there, and I've still got my ticket stub somewhere, or it's in the attic or whatever. And but I'm surprised there's not people out there who pretend that they were there, because it was such a sort of momentous occasion and the kind of arrival of a superstar, really. And I think obviously there was the treble years kind of towards the, although he sort of made that little cameo kind of comeback, didn't he, a few years afterwards. But I feel like his real heyday was the late 90s, early 2000s.
he was a natural finisher. I mean, did
Yeah,
you the Simon Jordan interviews with both Owen and Fowler, who was the better striker? And I love
yeah,
it because both of them say they were better than each other. But for me, like Fowler was just, I just think he edged it over Owen.
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
that goal celebration he did against Everton will live in me. I mean, it's probably the best goal celebration I have ever seen in my life, just because it's tongue in cheek and it was at the Evertonians, and you just can't
Yeah,
get better than that. All the grief he was getting and stuff. But I mean, just what a finisher. I mean, left foot, right foot, header, you name it. He was
yeah,
just on it. And yeah, to me, you know, especially with what Owen, did, like going to Man United and stuff. I didn't care about him going to Newcastle. But going to United was just like digging that knife a little
yeah,
bit deeper. And he was a fantastic striker, but Fowler for me all day long.
yeah, yeah.
And so,
Superb.
what what was your first match at Anfield?
My first match at Anfield was Southampton. I think it was either 90 or 91. And I'm sure we won 3-2. But I cried that day because we could only get tickets in the Southampton end. So my first match at Anfield was like, sort of 9, 10-year-old kid, really excited to go, and then it's like, don't cheer when we score. So I was devastated about that. And then in '92, I got tickets for Liverpool Sheffield United, which to the sort of what's the word? The aged or the match going regulars of many a season will go down in history with absolutely no one apart from I went and they won, and that was the main. And getting, it's funny how like you get just as excited about opening this little envelope with these bits of paper in as you would getting a sort of bike or a PlayStation or Sega Mega Drive or whatever it was back then. It's just going to Anfield, just a magical experience.
Yeah, well, it still is. I mean, when I get my digital download ticket, I'm like, yes, I've won the lottery, because I mean, back in our day, it was a little bit easier to get tickets. Now they're like gold dust,
Yeah.
It's really hard. I mean, bunch of my mates trying to get to Wembley, for the League Cup final. They go to every single match and they're having a hard time. So, I'm lucky that when I do go home, I do get to go see them. But yeah, back in the day, just standing in a queue and just paying at the turnstile and paying really cheap as well. Not like today, a lot more expensive. But so who took you to your first game then? Who actually bought you your ticket?
My brother took me. So I think that was pre Blackburn Rovers years. And then there was a family at. I'm not a religious person. I don't go to church anymore. But my mum, like a lot of kids, my mum dragged us to church, and there was a family we knew at church, and my mum knew that this sort of slightly older lad who she knew his mum or whatever. She knew he was a massive Liverpool fan and drove to Anfield. So she managed to persuade him to kind of drag me along as well. So I went to a few games with him growing up as well. So
well, it's like you're actually going to church though, Anfield. That's
yeah, exactly.
That's a lot of people's churches, on a Saturday and Sunday. So I'm not really religious either, but I consider that my church. So but I mean that's a good start. I mean, 10 years old, get to go to Anfield, even though it's in the away end, and you're crying. But there's just for the people that have never been, like it's just an amazing experience. Like still to this day, I get goosebumps when I go up the steps and you see the pitch, and especially for me, like at nighttime games, the floodlights, it's just an amazing atmosphere. And especially when you're in the Kop and you get to look out and you see everyone else, it's just, I tell everyone if you can just get to Liverpool to Anfield once, you can write that at your bucket list. It's just an amazing experience. I just wish everybody could enjoy it.
Yeah, and you do. I completely agree that like there's a lot of regulars who have been going for years who, because they miss one round of the Carabao Cup, aren't able to get a ticket for the final now, which is ridiculous. But then there's people out there who will say like, oh, I can never get a ticket for Anfield. And they never try and get a sort of wet Wednesday night early rounds of the FA or the Carabao Cup game. It's always like, oh, well, I tried to get Arsenal and there's no chance. Or I tried to get United and there's no chance. It's like, and it's still, I went to the Leicester game in the Carabao Cup this year, and it was still worth going. It was still a decent atmosphere, and got to see Soberslai's Screamer. So I would, my advice to any of those people is just, like you say, go to whatever game you can, because there are still, you obviously have to get a membership, but there are still the odd game that go to a sort of additional sale or a kind of, even a sort of general sale when it's one of those sort of low key matches, and it's still Anfield, and it's still a decent atmosphere sometimes, especially when they sort of, because I think they went 1-up in that game, and we kind of turned it round and really finished them off. So yeah, just get there.
Well, it's just having the experience going to Anfield. I mean, obviously, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, it can be a toxic place. But you just see like all these people like arguing, like they've not really gone to any games this season, but they want to get a League Cup final ticket. I'm like, come on, man, you haven't been to one game. You can't go from like A to Z like in the matter of 2 seconds and go straight to the final. I don't think that's right. But also the people selling tickets for 10, 15, 20 grand as well.
Yeah.
That's insane to me. I mean, I love Liverpool, but I'm not going to pay that much money, for the ticket for the final. That's just, it's mad. And I appreciate these people that if they are going to sell tickets, they sell for face value, not to make any money on it, just do it because you want to help other supporters out there haven't been, to see Anfield.
You do wonder how the sheer volume of tickets that end up on these sort of secondary sites end up there, because you think you're never gonna get rid of touting and sort of secondary ticketing altogether, but you sort of take a cursory glance just to see how much they're going for, and the site saying, "Oh, we've got 400 tickets," and like somehow, I'm sure some of them are fakes, but I'm sure a lot of them are genuine tickets that someone's managed to sort of procure, if that's the right word. You just think there must be something they can do to sort of clamp down on that.
Well, I think first off, like the FA and UEFA or FIFA, all of them need to stop this, like, 20,000 tickets for corporate.
Yeah.
As I find that's disgusting. I mean, we all know, during the COVID days, watching football without fans was a bit crap. And to me, if you've got, Wembley holds 100,000, say, if you've got at least 80,000 fans in there, they'll make a massive noise. And, the prawn cocktail crowd, they're not there these days for football. They're there for show, to take selfies, to, seen drinking champagne, prawn cocktail, all that rubbish. But we need to get back to, the fans. But that's where I think a lot of people are getting a bit disillusioned with football, is because the greed has come into it, and we see less and less supporters being able to afford these tickets.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're more likely to get, like, fans are quite good at policing each other in a way where you'll get like, oh, Bob sold his ticket last week to this lad who was over from Ireland for 60 or 70 quid, the greedy bastard. It's like 40 quid face value or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, which is like, I don't necessarily agree with that either, but it's not as big a problem as, like you say, these sort of faceless corporate entities who are getting hold of a number of tickets and then selling them for 500-600 quid, not 60 or 70. So I think, it's definitely a bit of a scourge on the game, really.
Yeah, it is. So I want to come back to, better things. Favorite moment as a Liverpool supporter?
Um, it's going to have to be the obvious one, the Barcelona 4-0 turnaround. Just going up to that game kind of initially very despondent and very like, what's the point? It's like we've no chance of getting anything out of the game, and we might be embarrassed again. And then you could sense, like, even before the game, the sort of mood slightly lifting to, I don't think a lot of people gave us any chance of actually turning it around. But I think there was more a sense of like, and in the pubs around the ground, there's a really good atmosphere considering the sort of task ahead of us, where it was just like, let's go out on a high. Let's kind of give a good account of ourselves and see what happens. And it just, that sort of optimism just rose and rose. And then, to be honest, when the corner was taken quickly and the fourth goal went in, it took me a few seconds to celebrate because it was such a weird goal. I thought, what? I didn't notice a whistle. I didn't notice, and because the players didn't move, it happened so quickly. The Barcelona players especially didn't move. I think the only two people that knew what was going on was Origi and Alexander-Arnold. Just thought, almost like he's taken that too quickly. They're going to make him take it again, or there's been a someone's offside or something's happened, because they wouldn't just stop and stand still like that. And then you realise that no, it's a legitimate goal. There's nothing wrong with it. Yeah. And then it's just pandemonium. Then,
yeah. Were you there, or were you watching it on the telly?
Yeah, I was there. there.
Wow, nice. Yeah, so. you could just sense. I watched it here in Austin at the pub, and I was due to fly out back home that day, like right after the match. I flew back. But yeah, it's just, I mean, even in the first leg, I thought we played really, really well. And 3 was kind of a bit, a
bit flattering for them.
It was for them, but I just thought, like, all right, I didn't think we'd ever overturn it. I just was like, let's just win it at Anfield. Let's see, And then I think once that second one went in, it's kind of reminded me a bit of like Istanbul.
Yeah.
When our second one went in from Smeesa, I was like, we're doing this. We're doing it.
Yeah.
And even just the way we set the tone. I mean, even Andy Robbo's come out and said, I can't believe I did what I did to Messi. He shoved his head. But that set the tone. That was like, we're not going to take, I mean, even Suarez was like gobsmacked, He just kept doing his hands like that, same with Coutinho as well. And I was just like, we're having this, You just knew it. But then, Robbo went off, I think, injured. And then, of all people, Genie comes on and he does the deed. But yeah, I'm with you on that fourth goal. I was just like, this, because you see the second ball get kicked out, and within 10 seconds that's when Trent takes the corner. And I think like the Barcelona players, yeah, obviously weren't set for it. And
yeah,
I thought like, what's going on? But everybody's celebrating. I was like, it was probably, yeah. I mean, to me, it's more than like when we won the league because, obviously we won the league during COVID, so nobody
yeah,
was able to really celebrate it. So watching that, but I mean, every now and again, I'll get on YouTube and I'll put the highlights on, and it's just amazing because that Barca team were just absolutely amazing. I mean, a
yeah,
team Messi, Suarez, Coutinho, Alba, just so good that we just had this never say die attitude, which I think we've always carried,
yeah,
throughout our history. So I mean, it's just so one of those. I mean, the Dortmund one. You can go back to the '70s, Saint Etienne. We've always had that. We're the comeback kings, and you know, it doesn't do the heart much
yeah,
good. I mean, if you're a Liverpool supporter, you got to go through the ups and downs. The crying,
yeah,
the laughter, the smiling, the crying again. It's just that's who we are. And now, we're in the winding down the Klopp era, which
yeah,
is a really sad time because he's just an amazing. I've said it before on the pod. He's not just a manager; he's an amazing human being, and he not only gets this football club, he gets the people, he gets the city. Um, I'm sure we all want a Klopp hug. He's our like second dad. But out of the current squad, who would you like to sit down and have a bevy with?
Oh, that's a good question. I've actually been fortunate enough to do a little private gig for Andy Robertson, so I can vouch for the fact that he's a good lad to sort of have a non-alcoholic on his part anyway, bevy with. Um, but yeah, he was sound. Apart from him, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think not just like who I admire as a player as well.
Mhm.
Because I'm trying to think who in the Liverpool squad might share sort of musical tastes. Or um, Van Dijk always comes across as incredibly cool and sort of um, level-headed, and just he seems like he'd be a good person to sort of have a bevy with. I don't know if he drinks or not, but
I've seen
yeah,
him drink Heineken, so
yeah,
obviously,
yeah,
I mean that might be zero Heineken, but yeah, I think Van Dijk for me, just
yeah,
he's just so cool and mellow. I mean, he
yeah,
was
yeah,
too mellow. He was too mellow the other day,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
with the mistakes, But again, they're human beings. But yeah, I think Andy Robbo because I actually saw when I think it was after last season, he went to Vegas and I saw him
yeah,
with like Jack Grealish and they were just having a good old, you know,
yeah,
party time. Which, again, we just think footballers like don't live the lives that we live.
yeah,
And they're allowed to just, Jack the lad, Grealish. He's allowed to
yeah,
let his hair down and have a few bevies and get,
yeah,
drunk. And I think Andy Robbo, like, he's such a piss taker as well, isn't he? Like he
yeah,
takes
yeah,
the piss out of everything, and I love that. It's just and then his football knowledge as well. Just I can't imagine like you know coming from Scotland and then he plays Hull. We buy him for 7.5 mil, I think.
yeah,
That's some of the best money we've ever spent on a left
yeah,
back. And some people say he's done. I'm like, I think he's still, in his prime. I still think, footballers are allowed a dip in form,
yeah,
and he has had a dip in form. But I just think, he's got at least another 2 seasons at Liverpool. To He doesn't need to prove himself. He's already won the Champions League, Super Cup, already won the league.
Yeah,
That's got to be amazing to go from Hull to Liverpool. It's such a step up, and
yeah.
it hasn't changed as a person. You
I'm
see,
gonna throw I'm gonna throw a complete curveball in here. Okay. And he's obviously not at the club anymore, and he certainly had his detractors. But I reckon Alberto Moreno would be a good bloke to have a pint with. He looks like, although he looks like the kind of character that would be amazing sort of company and like quite mischievous and funny early on in the night. And it's whether you could still stomach that sort of later on when you're getting a bit more maudlin and kind of want to wind things down. He's probably the one who's still setting off the fire alarms. And
yeah.
um,
Well, I mean, I love what he did when his team beat Man United,
yeah,
and he
get
was,
out.
yeah, yeah, he was just again taking the piss. I mean, he wasn't the best left back for us.
Yeah,
I wouldn't. I
no,
mean,
no, he had
probably not
some
the
good
worst,
games.
but he was that cheeky little Spanish lad, wasn't he? Um,
Yeah.
have some sangria with him, but yeah, I could probably only take a few hours of him, and then it's like I've had enough.
Another speaking of um, cult heroes, shall we say? Another game that sticks in the memory is probably quite unremarkable for most people, but memorable for me because I was there. Was Deportivo La Coruña in the run up to Istanbul, which I'm pretty sure was Igor Biscan's best game in a Liverpool shirt. And it was 1-0, a fairly unremarkable game. But just another example of those like random Liverpool away trips. That's like you say, everyone should go to Anfield at least once, and everyone should experience a Liverpool away at least once.
Yeah, especially
And
a European away.
yeah, don't go for the glory game. But
Yeah,
well, by all means do if you can, but yeah, let's see you in the sort of group stages of the Europa League or even the Champions League at Deportivo or yeah, at
well,
Lyon or
that's
wherever.
part of it, though, isn't it? Is the travel with your mates.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
part of the journey. That's part of like football. Like I used to go regularly, like in the 90s away days in Europe, and I miss that.
yeah,
Until you like, especially living over here in the States. The States is so massive. You can't just get in a car and like drive from Austin to New York to watch a football match. It's planes. While back home, it's trains, it's
mm.
it's dinghies, it's whatever
By
you
all means necessary.
exactly. I love that video of them, going across the English Channel in the dinghy. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. I'm very brave.
Yeah.
So, James, I want to get to your musical roots now. So your mum and dad, your household. For me, I grew up with my mum liked Elvis, and my dad was a like rocker, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple. So, what were your musical roots? What was your household listening to?
Oh, um, sorry, I was just checking my battery level then. It's all right though. Um, my dad had a pretty extensive uh, vinyl collection. Um, so there was a lot of, although to be honest, he wouldn't really play a lot of those records when I was growing up. So I could see like Crosby, Stills and Nash, um, Neil Young, the Beatles, uh, I'm trying to think. The Rolling Stones, loads of soul and Motown on the shelves. But the stuff he'd play in the car was Phil Collins, Mike and the Mechanics. What else? Barbara Dixon, Dire Straits, Bruce Springsteen. And I have to admit, like, I do have a bit of a soft spot for some of those artists or songs in my sort of older years, especially Springsteen. I think he's amazing. But when you're growing up, you just think this is just naff.
Yeah.
Dad music, like Dire Straits, was just the sound of sort of dad's. When you go on a caravan in holiday or something, it's like money for nothing and songs like that are just. Back then, you just think of it as just the most naff music that it's possible to make, and now again, I sort of think. Obviously Mark Knopfler's an unbelievable guitarist, and there's quite a few Dire Straits tunes that are obviously really great, well-written songs. But I think to sort of move on to when I started really getting into it again, my older brother was into the Stone Roses and the Charlatans, and I'd sort of enjoy kind of listening to that and hearing it emanating from his bedroom. And then Oasis and Blur, Pulp, the Britpop scene basically became that for me. That was my sort of era. So yeah, but sort of going back to what you're saying about the sort of influences on me. My mum and dad never played music in the house, as in neither of them play instruments. My uncle, who's sadly no longer with us, was an accordionist. So there was some sort of musical prowess in the family. Sort of a few, however, much removed from the immediate family. And yeah, it's quite a difficult question to answer because I feel like a lot of people can pinpoint exactly, like I was listening to, I was dancing to Stevie Wonder when I was in nappies, and I just knew I wanted to pick up a guitar. Whereas for me, I think I used to sing in the choir and enjoy singing from a very early age. But the notion of like actually making a career of it and wanting to form a band and take it seriously didn't come until sort of later on in life. I guess prior to Britpop, I was a big U2 fan. I always forget which sounds weird to say, I always forget the sort of seminal influence that they had on me. Because they're such a massive band, and maybe at some points I thought, it's not cool to say U2 got you into music. And then because the Britpop thing happening was such a seismic event and very much kind of took over from that love of U2, I do forget kind of going down to Action Records in Preston and buying Zoo Roper and Zoo TV VHS video and stuff like that, and practicing my best Bono moves.
Well, I mean, every kid, especially that I knew, you pick up a tennis racket and you play the guitar, you just pretended, I don't know really many people that like already thought, that's it, I'm going to be a rock and roll star. I mean, for me, I got my music from my sister. She was more, the Depeche Mode, New Order.
Hmm.
I kind of got into that, the little 45s. And then I'm the same, Stone Roses came along, and there was just something about them, that changed for me musically. They brought the psychedelic into it, but it was more, it's rock and roll, but it was more psychedelic. And then
Yeah,
obviously, Oasis were just full on, rock and roll. Say what you want about Liam and Noel, as people do, but they together they just worked. And
yeah,
he is, Liam is a rock star. He's a amazing frontman. So I think that changed the musical landscape. I think for a lot of people. I know you started piano pretty early, didn't you?
yeah, yeah. Um, that was just kind of uh, yeah, just sort of learning the basics, and I didn't really take to piano in the same way that I took to guitar. I think once I um once I kind of picked up a guitar, I sort of almost didn't put it down. I've not put it down for sort of 20 odd years, or even longer than that now, for 30 odd years. Um, but yeah, there's just something about it that made me persevere with it. Whereas I'm sure my mum and dad could tell you there's countless other hobbies that I've tried to take up and abandoned after 5 minutes because I wasn't getting anywhere with it. Whereas the guitar, um, it's always a mixture of some, like, without wanting to sound egotistical, there's some, I guess everyone has things that they're naturally um, kind of get the hang of, really. Not, yeah, like I say, not sort of getting too big headed and like, oh, I picked it up and suddenly I was Hendrix. It's just you pick it up and you go, oh, if I put my fingers there and do that, it makes a nice sound. Oh, if I
They look
move the mirror, yeah, yeah. And even that, like, there are some people whose sort of talents lie elsewhere, and they find those sort of basics very difficult with kind of learning the guitar.
Mhm.
Whereas I just, yeah, sort of had a natural affinity for it and enjoyed doing it. That's the main thing. Is it's like once you can get, and it is one of those things where like once you can get a few chords out of it, you can learn songs and entertain yourself and start writing songs. And um, I remember when I was like very young, sort of 6, 7, 8, um, maybe even a little bit older than that, I still was like, I want to be a footballer and play for Liverpool. And um, the big stumbling block to that is I am shit at football. Like very, a very, maybe shit's half. It's certainly an average footballer, like bang average kind of. Um, and yeah, I just got frustrated at how I wouldn't get any better, no matter how hard I tried or how hard I worked. It just wasn't for me. No matter how much I loved it and I loved watching it, and um, I loved playing it as well. Unless there was completely out of my depth and just having sort of rings ran around me, I still enjoy it as long as there's a few players as shit as me on the team.
Yeah, that always
But
helps, doesn't it? Yeah.
yeah, but then yeah, music was just the thing that was like that. Yeah, this is. It might not be as popular with the lads at school, or also obviously later on in life when you're trying to impress the girls at school. Um, it was still like the captain of the football team was was still the one that kind of everyone was interested in. It's like, well, I have no choice really but to kind of throw myself into music because I enjoy it and I'm making progress with the work that I put in, whereas lots of other things in life that I tried, I just didn't progress in them. I guess to sort of maybe get a bit more kind of deep and philosophical about it into a wider thing, is like, I think maybe kids are too the sort of school thing is like there's a lot of doing subjects or doing sports or doing things that maybe just a waste for some kids whose talents lie elsewhere. I think there's probably a level of schooling and spelling and grammar and basic mathematics that everyone should know to kind of get by in life. And then it should be about bringing the best out of kids and what they, if they show a natural prowess in a certain area, just absolutely, what's the word? Just push that as much as you can. And, or maybe that's just me because I was shit at a lot of things at school.
Well, I mean, I look back, obviously I could do math, but then I'm like, when am I ever going to use algebra? I'm not going to balance my checkbook with algebra.
No.
It's just daft. I just think, especially these days, going to college is kind of pushed on you. You've got to go to college to become someone, and that's just a bunch of bollocks. If the college is for you, then that's for you. If you want to be a musician, go all out and try and be one. If you want to be a footballer, try it. If it doesn't work out, maybe something else. You want to be the best plumber in the world, be the best plumber. It's just I think kids are kind of pushed a little bit too much. I mean, as you know, you've got kids. I've got kids as well. I want them to be who they want to be. Follow that path. I've got one of my 8-year-olds. She sings non-stop. So I'm like, I want to get her, if she wants, get her in a theatre class, get her in a singing, and if she enjoys it, go with that. It makes her happy. It makes her smile every morning. So I'm like, when I get up at 6 a.m. and she's already in concert mode, you don't really want to hear singing at 6 o'clock in the morning. You just want to get your kids ready for school. But, it makes her happy.
Yeah.
So who am I to, stop that?
Yeah.
So how did Starsailor come about?
We all met at college. And again, it was a bit of a revelation for me because I did music at school and there were a few lads who would sort of play in little bands with, just sort of rehearsing covers and things to do for the GCSE performance. But generally speaking, there wasn't a massive music scene in terms of playing at school. So then when I went to college and did music at college, it was great to be among kind of like-minded people. And I remember someone was ill for this big sort of Christmas performance we were doing at college. And that's when the drummer and the bass player who play in the band heard me sing and decided they wanted to form a band. And we went through a series of different guitarists who all probably hate our guts now. Because we never sort of experienced any kind of level of success until we brought in without wanting to sort of massage his ego too much, when we brought in Barry on the keyboards, that's what cemented the sound really, and started getting people interested in the band, because it suddenly went from a very traditional sort of amp turned up to 11, effects pedals and everything, Britpop-esque sound, to something a bit more kind of harking back to Neil Young and Joni Mitchell, with a more acoustic and piano driven sound, which I guess it kind of brought the songs to life in a way, because they weren't buried under all our kind of posturing and sort of trying hard to capture people's attention with the performance. Like, no, if the songs are good enough, then they can be sort of effortless, and that's where it sort of snowballed from.
Yeah, I mean, going into your debut album, Love Is Here, which still to this day, I mean, 2001 it came out. I bought the album back then. It was brilliant. My favorite is Lullaby. I just think the lyrics are just great. But how was it, your debut album, knowing what you know now, going back then? Oh, little froggy in my throat. Having this debut album and the world is your oyster, so to speak. How was it to actually, have that album out at the time?
Unbelievable. Yeah, it was just a bit of a whirlwind as well. Like, I feel like we almost weren't as nervous about releasing an album then as we have been subsequently, because it was all just a dream. We were like, what is this really happening, kind of thing. Whereas now you're kind of more, I guess you just get a bit older and you're aware of the whole process and all the different characters involved. We were just like, and Steve Osborne, who produced the album, obviously, because we'd never been in a big studio before or made an album before, he was kind of more of a school teacher type character, where he really, he didn't mess with the songs, but the album sounds the way it does, in a lot of ways, because of him kind of taking us under his wing and helping to sort of shape the sound of the band really, and capture the what had kind of got us the sort of record deal and got us in the studio in the first place, the sort of live sound, trying to capture that on record. But yeah, it was an unforgettable time, really. Doing stuff like Top of the Pops. You just
talking of Phil Collins and Dire Straits, Top of the Pops. Wow,
it's unbelievably it's unbelievably exciting, and yes, like stuff like going to America. Remember going to America, and the record label got us a limousine from the airport and stuff like that, where you just, in retrospect, you realize that you're paying for it all, or it's going against your sort of recording advance or whatever. But at the time, you just think this is insane and exciting, and just crazy sort of time.
Yeah, it's crazy to think because I've talked to quite few musicians on the podcast and off of it. Is everybody thinks like you live this certain lifestyle, and that you're all millionaires, but that it's not true because you have to pay, like you said, you get an advance, and you have to pay for the, travel. You have to pay for hotels. You have to pay
Yeah,
for, everybody that's in the band and whoever comes with it and stuff. And it's not all this glitz and glamour, that we all think when we see all these stars on the telly and stuff. They're untouchable, and it's just, it's a cutthroat business.
yeah, absolutely. I think I dread to think how much money we owe the the uh, the thing is we sort of get when you're a kind of heritage act, for want of a better word, when you're not signed to a label. It's Warner's now, so I dread to think how much we still owe Warner's, because they throw all this money at you, and don't get me wrong, like uh, we got enough money to, especially as young people, you get enough money to have a fairly decent life. Um, but there's also all this money they throw at you that they spend on videos, and they spend on promotion, and they spend on marketing, and you don't really have any choice in the matter of, like, could we maybe make a 20 grand video instead of a 150 grand video? It's just like, this is gonna sell the record, so um, we're gonna have to do it like this. And yeah, it just builds up a massive debt, and yeah, it makes it can make it sort of more difficult, uh, sort of later on in life to. But the one area that um, has been a bit more steady and a bit more easy to navigate is the publishing world. Like, and I'm fortunate that I've written with other artists as well, and um, the songs have always managed to be played. The remix of Four to the Floor is um, kept me afloat many a time, and the Way to Fall being in the Metal Gear Solid game as well. But yeah, like you say, it's not a life of glitz and glamour. And there's, put it this way, there are plenty of people that I know and people who I've grown up with who are a lot better off than me, just because they've climbed the corporate ladder, or and this isn't meant as a dig or anything like that. It's just and especially because those sorts of worlds as well have a very straightforward ladder, for want of a better phrase, where it's like, you start off as a junior, then you become this, then you become that, then you become that. Whereas the music industry, for even for the lucky people, the likelihood is that your early albums are going to be your successful ones, and they're going to be the biggest venues you play, and you have to sort of come to terms with things not having that upward trajectory that a lot of careers have. But then, like I say, you have to sort of forget about that and think how fortunate you are to still be doing it on any level. To be sat in a hotel room in Antwerp at kind of 43.
Well, you keep integrity as well.
Yeah,
you see these pop stars that they're told what to wear, how to
yeah,
sing, how to kind of act, behave. That's not music for me. Music is
Yeah,
just, whether you in front of a piano singing your heart out, you've got a guitar around you, you're
yeah,
true to yourself. And I think, you have been with your solo stuff and with Starsailor, I mean, you kind of look at, I would say Coldplay,
yeah,
they're on, they, when Yellow came out, they were the fresh faced boys, and they went on this path, and they were kind of like the younger man's version of U2.
yeah,
Everybody wanted to be part of them and stuff, and I think sometimes it's place and time
yeah. I
can.
think, yeah, I think one. I said this in an interview the other day where like social media is responsible for a lot of the evils of the world, and it's definitely got its downsides. But I think one good aspect of social media is that instant feedback, um, especially obviously when it's positive feedback. But back in the day, you'd release an album, and if it didn't perform how the label expected, if it didn't get the reviews that you'd hoped for, if you pick up The Enemy and it's like 2 stars, what's this tripe or whatever. We never got a review like that, but just a sort of hypothetical example, you'd just be on a downer because
Mhm.
that you had no other way of, apart from obviously between the four of you, like we've done our best, we've made a record that we're proud of. Beyond that, there's no other sort of metric to say, well, this has worked, this has been worthwhile. Um, like I say, doing it and being proud of it is makes it worthwhile in a way, but beyond that, but with social media, without wanting to sound cheesy, it does mean something when an individual says, I just put the album on and wow,
Mhm.
it's amazing. Track 6 made me cry. And it genuinely means something to bands to hear that. And it was something that wasn't necessarily, unless people wrote to you or wrote on a message board, you wouldn't get that kind of
Mhm.
validation, I guess. And
I
at
think
that sort of, especially for my solo career as well, because it is that much smaller and that much more reliant on people seeing a message on Twitter or on Instagram say that I've got a gig and then turning up. It's made a big difference.
Mhm. But also, you've got the bad side as well, because a review could ruin you. I know, with restaurants, a review could just absolutely shatter your dreams, and
Yeah,
people feed off of that. It's like, okay, have you listened to the new Star Sailor album? No, but I heard it's shite.
yeah, yeah,
It's stuff like that. It's like,
yeah, yeah,
how can you say it's shite if you've never heard it? Like that,
yeah,
do, that doesn't make sense to me. Make your own mind up. Don't take somebody that's on Twitter, Instagram saying, this is,
yeah,
even if they say it's good, you know,
yeah,
take a lesson for yourself.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've never understood that. Um, so the album drops in March. Tour coming up.
Yeah, we're doing a tour in April, so we'll be at the Brudenell in Leeds, Queen's Hall in Edinburgh, um, Fire Station, I think it's called, in Sunderland. Where else? We're doing Belgium and Holland again, Amsterdam and Brussels, Bristol. Um, I'm sure I've forgotten some, but yeah,
Are you coming
pretty
out to
low
the
key.
States?
Um, I don't think so. I think yeah, we've not been to America for ages because of the it's so expensive to tour in America now, and so difficult to sort of secure all the necessary visas and things. But I think the tour's fairly low key because we obviously did a lot of touring for Silence is Easy last year, which was the sort of 20th anniversary. And we want to really showcase the new album. So I think that kind of works better in a sort of smaller venue with a more kind of hardcore crowd.
Are you going to try and just play the whole of the new album, or are you going to like take snippets from all your other?
Yeah, I think we're more likely to do a set which is a good mix of all the records. It's funny because like as a musician you get increasingly frustrated with people not latching on to your kind of newer stuff as much as you'd like them. But then I think how I am as a music fan, I think, well, I'm a bit of a hypocrite in a way because like when I go and watch the Charlatans, who are one of my favorite bands, and I love their new stuff. I've got nothing against it, and I wouldn't go to the bar if they said, "Oh, this is from our new album." But it's never gonna make my sort of heart leap, like when they play Just Looking or North Country Boy. So I think to kind of be that band for people and for them to still turn up at the gigs is enough. It should be enough in a way, even if they don't necessarily think that your latest album is the best thing you've ever done. I think you've just got to try and do that from a personal point of view, and from a, like I say, between the four of you, you've got to think, let's make this the best album we can possibly do. But you can't, in some ways, you can't compete with nostalgia. You can't compete with those songs you heard when you were 17. So the best thing is just to make the best thing you can do now, and hope that even if it's a tiny amount of people discover the band through the new record, then it's worth doing.
Yeah, because then they can actually, go back.
Yeah.
In your discography and go, oh, they have more than one album, which is all good, and I think even with the because I DJ like house music, so when Four on the Floor the remix came out, I think that also helped because more people were like, who is Starsailor? And then they go, I'm gonna check that album out. So I think that really helped, before we leave, I always ask, well, I've got two questions for you. But the first one is, festival lineup for a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they can be alive or dead.
Oh, wow. Friday. Oh, great question. Big Star. And
don't tell me it's like Phil Collins, Dire Straits, and
on the Friday I'll have Big Star, and try to think someone quite raucous and Big Star and the Rolling Stones. Saturday, the Beatles. Painfully obvious, I know, but how can you not have the Beatles on a festival? The Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, and Dusty Springfield. And then what are we doing? Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah.
Cool. Something more mellow on the Sunday. So, Joni Mitchell headlining, Nick Drake, Elliott Smith,
Nice.
and then to bring it slightly more up to date, but still going back a few years, Badly Drawn Boy.
Oh,
I'd
yes.
stick him on there with. I think he'd go great with Elliott Smith and Joni and Nick Drake.
Yeah. Well, I would pay to go to that festival.
Excellent.
Definitely. And last not but least, we all know Klopp's leaving at the end of the season. You know, there'll be a few tears shed. What has Jurgen Norbert Klopp meant to you?
Um, I've heard it said a lot, but he's been this generation's kind of iconic manager. I feel like it's slightly disrespectful to say this generation's Shankly because there'll only be one Shankly to sort of transform the club to that degree, and that relationship with the fans and the city is completely unique. And Jurgen Klopp, even with Rafa, who came very sort of close to what Klopp's done, I think Klopp's just edged Rafa as like the manager who's come the closest to Shankly and Paisley, and Fagan to sort of uniting the community and the city and the football club. I think it's kind of why this moment was always inevitable as well, was because he's almost become unsackable.
Mhm.
Because his relationship, no matter how the form went, because his relationship with the and I'm not saying that it ever was anywhere near that kind of level, but even in a hypothetical world where we just were losing every week, you just feel like he was always going to be the one that walked away. Not He would never be pushed by the club because the relationship with the fans was so deep seated, and there's a sort of genuine and mutual respect. So I feel like obviously everyone's gutted that he's going, but it's good that he's hopefully, touch wood, going on a high, and he's left the team in good shape. Um, so especially with the youngsters like Connor Bradley coming through, Curtis Jones has really hit form.
Mhm.
Harvey Elliott, I think, is a player who has the odd sort of he has a yeah. I don't I don't want to be too disrespectful because he's obviously a 10,000 billion times better footballer than me, but he's the kind of player who will have the odd bad game. But I think his sort of um, progress is coming along nicely, and his passion for the club. So I think, yeah, sort of top to bottom, it's a really good. Um, there's never a good time to leave, but I'd rather he left with the club in this state and um, with this sort of new look Liverpool
Mhm.
side starting to purr than if he'd kind of if he'd walked out when before we'd got Soberslay in, and um, before we'd signed Nunes even, and kind of when Firmino had gone, and Mane and Wijnaldum. We forget that there's three massive players from his sort of era that no longer play for us. If he'd left after that, then you think, oh well, he's kind of cut and run. Whereas he's done a great job of. It's maybe one of these things that has been in his mind for quite a long time, sort of longer than he's let on. That he's thought this, his love for the club and his love for the city is constantly wrestling with this just sheer exhaustion that he speaks of, and just need to have some family time. And I guess, ironically, in a way, it is that having that massive emotional attachment. I guess we saw the same with Kenny in a way, where it's like that can make it even more draining, and more draining's the wrong word because it's a positive relationship, but a more exhausting and a more sort of heavy thing to carry when you're so. It's more than a job, like you say. So you don't just want to phone it in. You're constantly passionate about it, and when the personal life and the sort of relationship with your loved ones starts to suffer a little bit, or you don't spend as much time with them as you'd like to, then it means that sort of gut-wrenching decision needs to be taken.
Yeah, I just hope we go out, winning it all. Because that would just be a fairy tale. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
He's just transformed this football team, and at least for the next manager, it's an amazing. He's built the bridge already. We just need to add on to it, and we'll see next season who we have. But really appreciate you coming on. Please,
No
everyone, go check out James's album. Comes out in March. But also check out all his other albums, his solo work, and all of Starsailor's back catalogue. You don't have to believe me, but every album I've got, I think it's brilliant. I do, and this is not just because I'm right in front of you. If it was crap, I would tell you it was crap. I'm pretty open. But I've always loved Starsailor. So please go check them out. And
cool.
Until next
Thank
time.
You.
Please like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and we'll see you next time.